Human survival has its limitations. We're vulnerable creatures made of flesh and blood. And there are horrifying circumstances that we mere mortals were just not designed to withstand, or so we're led to believe. Plane crashes have claimed thousands of lives since the dawn of aviation, and the odds of living through a fiery crash from 35,000 feet are incredibly slim. But every once in a while, there are survivors who live to tell their unbelievable version of events. Do the following three tales prove that some humans have the strength to survive certain death, or are they fictional tales of pure luck that never took place? Can you decide between what's fact or fiction?
The line that divides the factual from the unreal has long since blurred. The tales we once thought fantastical, now implanted as true. To decipher verity from the imagined, you must break from the ordinary and consider a universe where the outlandish prevails. Can you expand your mind to see beyond our perceived reality? Can you decide what's fact or fiction?
Being a flight attendant is many people's dream career path. It brings to mind a lifestyle of glamour and worldwide travel. But as Anastasia Levesque soon found out, it can sometimes mean fighting to survive a terrorist attack and an unbelievable fall.
22-year-old Anastasia had dreamed of being a flight attendant ever since her best friend landed a job. She had also recently traveled to the UK, driven by her love of the Beatles. So, of course, Anastasia further reasoned that a flight attendant job might allow her to visit her beloved England more often. Her ambition paid off, and in 1971, she joined the ranks of JAT Airways, Yugoslavia's largest airline. Little did she know, it would only be a year before her highs were met with lows. It was an icy, cold January afternoon when Flight 349 departed from Stockholm, Sweden, with stopovers planned in Denmark and what is now Croatia. Their flight departed Copenhagen Airport as scheduled at 3:15 p.m. Just 46 minutes later, an explosion ripped through the baggage compartment of the DC-9 aircraft. Believed to be a briefcase bomb, the fireball was so powerful that it tore the plane apart in midair. Of the 28 passengers and crew on board, Anastasia would go on to be the sole survivor. She was found in the wreckage screaming, her turquoise uniform dripping in blood. Although alive, she suffered horrific injuries, including 2 broken legs, a fractured skull and pelvis, several broken ribs, and 3 broken vertebrae which caused temporary paralysis. She then spent several days in a coma and remembered nothing of that fateful day after greeting passengers boarding the plane. She only learned of the crash 2 weeks later when a doctor showed her a newspaper headline which caused her so much distress that she had to be tranquilized. Her death-defying survival in the face of certain death shocked the world and was front-page news. Perhaps the weirdest part of all, her survival can be attributed to a food cart that trapped her in the fuselage and her low blood pressure that caused her to immediately pass out.
Humans are resilient creatures, and the state of shock and fear can sometimes allow us to survive rather impossible situations. But are we really strong enough to survive a fall from such a height? Surviving a crash while a pilot is attempting to land is one thing, but to live through a 33,000-foot free fall, trapped in only a small section of a plane, is that even possible? We want to hear what you think, so let us know in the comments section and be sure to vote using our on-screen poll. Next, we're taking a trip to the Indian Ocean to introduce you to 12-year-old Claire Licari, an incredible young girl whose determination led to the survival of an unimaginably terrifying ordeal.
When Claire and her mother set off from Paris for a summer vacation in the Comoros Islands near Madagascar, neither of them dreamed that their day would end in a cruel and punishing fight for survival. On that fateful day, June 30th, 2009, Claire and her mother were full of excitement as they set off on what was to be the holiday of a lifetime. As they boarded Yemenia Flight 545, they chatted excitedly about their trip and all the things they wanted to do together during their idyllic island escape. Sadly, they would never have the chance to live out their plans. At 1:50 a.m., during the descent into their final destination, something went terribly wrong. The plane smashed into the ocean just 9 miles north of the coastline. The aircraft broke up as it hit the water at full speed, and Claire was thrown out into the unforgiving waters. Without a life jacket or the ability to swim, Claire was certain to perish as she floated alone in the shark-infested waters of the Indian Ocean. She clung to a makeshift raft, a piece of the doomed aircraft's fuselage, for more than 9 hours, drifting in the pitch-black ocean. She was certain that if the waters didn't claim her, the sharks within it would. The cries and moans of other survivors quickly turned to silence, and Claire was left alone, floating aimlessly. 152 people on board the Airbus A310 perished. But somehow, Claire only suffered from a fractured pelvis and collarbone, burns, and some minor facial injuries. After being picked up by a passing boat, Claire had to be convinced that she just survived a plane crash. Still in a deep state of shock, she thought she had fallen from the plane after pressing her forehead too hard against one of its windows.
How can a child who can't swim survive for 9 hours in the Indian Ocean after surviving a plane crash? Clearly, this tale is too fantastical to be true, right? Well, then again, if we've learned anything from this series, is that fact is often stranger than fiction. Let us know what you think in the comments section right now. And don't forget to vote using the on-screen poll. Now, before we get into the reveal, we have one last high-altitude horror story to share with you. You know, people fly for business every day, and for some, taking a flight is akin to taking a bus or a train. Nobody ever thinks that a routine flight to see a business contact will lead to a terrifying 3-day battle for survival in the unforgiving Vietnamese jungle. But for Sang-min Park, that's exactly what happened.
45-year-old Sang-min Park was well adjusted to taking flights from his home city of Seoul in South Korea. As a business owner, he often had to travel around the world to visit clients, investors, and stakeholders, and that fateful day of October 21st, 1998 was no different. Booked onto an early morning flight to Singapore, Sang-min made his way to the airport thinking about the meeting he was to have that evening with a potential new investor. He boarded the Boeing 737 plane along with 188 other crew and passengers, and they set off on what should have been a casual 7-hour flight. The journey of Korean Air Flight KE-694 had been completely smooth until, at roughly 9:53 a.m., a section of the aircraft's fuselage suddenly blew out, creating a gaping hole in the side of the plane. 4 passengers were immediately sucked out, and the plane began to descend uncontrollably from 30,000 feet. The plane came down in a ball of fire in the Vietnamese jungle, breaking up as the captain tried valiantly to come down through the dense trees as smooth as possible. As sections of the plane broke apart, Sang-min's row of seats became loose, sending 2 fellow passengers and himself crashing through the jungle canopy, still strapped in with their seatbelts. The fauna helped break their fall, eventually landing upside down on the jungle floor. With a badly broken arm and lots of painful cuts and bruises, Sang-min freed his seatmates, both of which, sadly, weren't as lucky as him. There Sang-min was, by himself, physically broken and at the mercy of Mother Nature. Seeing a thick plume of smoke a short distance away, Sangman decided to trek the woods to see if there were any other survivors. It wasn't an easy adventure in his condition, but he managed, eventually stumbling upon the bigger part of the wreckage. After a quick search, Sangman's efforts seemed to be fruitless. He began to break down, sobbing and unaware of what to do next. And then, miraculously, a blood-curdling cough could be heard from the cockpit. Sangman violently dug through the wreckage, hands covered in blood as he ripped away at the sheet metal. Then, there he was, the captain. He was unconscious, but alive, desperately clenching onto life while still making mayday calls. To Sangman's surprise, there was actually someone on the other end. Taking the radio, Sangman was able to better explain what happened and where they were. The two would sit together until help arrived about 45 minutes later, but by then, Sangman would be alone. When first responders landed, Sangman was still holding on to the hands of the pilot, silently saying, "Thank you."
Was there a greater force looking out for Sangman that day? Is it coincidence that the pilot stayed alive just long enough to help Sangman with a distress call? Or maybe this story was a product of our own imaginations. Let us know what you think about our jungle tale in the comments section below. And don't forget to vote now using the on-screen poll.
Are you ready to find out if you can decipher between fact or fiction? Let's look back at tonight's 3 stories and find out which were born from reality and which were fabrications of the imagination.
Let's go back to Anastasia Levesque, our flight attendant who lived through a fall from over 30,000 feet. Do you think she really could have survived such an incredible fall? If you said yes, then it might be possible that you've read the Guinness World Book of Records. This true tale was inspired by Vesna Volovic, a Serbian flight attendant who holds the record for the highest freefall without the aid of a parachute. Until her death in 2016, Volovic remained tight-lipped about the incident and shunned her celebrity status. Okay, can you go 2 for 2 and guess whether Claire Licari really survived a crash that killed over 150 others? If you said no, then you'd be wrong. This shocking story of survival is completely true. Bahia Bakari was named the miracle child by the media after she was deemed to be the sole survivor of the deadliest airplane crash in an ocean. So how about our third story about Sangman and his adventures through the jungle? Although it's entirely possible, our version of events was completely penned by our own writers.
How well did you do in tonight's video? Did you look past the deception of our world and define the off-blurred line that struggles to separate lies from the truth? Let us know in the comment section below. And should you find the urge to test your perceptions again, be sure to subscribe and join us next time when we ask you to decide what's fact or fiction.